Hi, I'm Chuck Dorsett for Weaver Leather Supply. Let's take our wet forming up a step because there's something very creative and very cool we can do here beyond just pockets and welts. You'll see what I'm talking about. All right, so anything I use in this video, weaverleathersupply.com or check below. We've got links there. Going to take you straight to the website. Also, if you want to know when our videos release, just click your notifications. You'll know exactly when these come out. So let's step over to our pattern table, see what we're talking about. It is time to get creative, and if you don't feel like a creative person, I think you're about to surprise yourself. Here's why I say this. One of the classes I teach at shows is wet forming. Well, the first few steps, we go over a couple of utility uses like, say, welts or keepers or pockets. Then we step it up because now we're going to add a design onto our form. We can do it both on the pocket and the flap. Really tie a project together. So let's start here. This is our cell case. We've got a good video on this, so we're not going to go into great detail on the construction. But what we are going to do, let's form our pocket and a design on that pocket. So we're going to go two ways here. We're going to go with a simple geometric shape. Then we're going to create our own shape. Okay, right here, simple geometric shape. How many ways could we possibly go with this? We're going to do a 5-pointed star. We've got a good video, Shop Tricks 11, shows us how to draw out a 5-pointed star. Super easy to do, and we can make it any size. But how about a heart or one diamond, multiple diamonds, a steer head? So many ways we can go. Get creative with this. But let's go with a star, get the feel for this. Okay, now just some background info. I've created a form here. This is simply scrap leather. It's 4 plies of 8 to 9 ounce. Now make this depending on the thickness of your phone, but that'll do most phones. Now I've added our pattern sheeting onto the top of this because as we wet this, as we put wet leather on this, our edges are going to soften and round. The pattern sheeting is going to keep that from happening. Now, lifelong mold? Not really, but we'll be surprised at how many molds we can get from a simple form like this. Okay, so our star, let's do this. Let's take a scrap piece of 8 to 9 ounce. Let's draw out our star, whatever size we want. Let's take this, jump over to our main table, cut some leather. We're dealing with a relatively small design here, but we're just working with a cell case. It's a smaller project. But think of something like a briefcase or saddlebags, purse, bag, pouch. We can create a design that would span the entire flap. So really what I'm saying is let's fill out our space with our design, okay? So with this, we're going to go with an 8 to 9 ounce leather. Well, I want something that's got a little more thickness to it. The thicker our leather on our form, the deeper our mold is going to be, the better it's going to stand out. So right here, our pattern sheeting. Now, this is not as easy to draw on as I would like, so let's do this. Let's take our leather, let's drop in our star, but our first step, and this is going to help us later, let's mark our center point. Okay, now let's draw this in with our pen. Okay, that looks good. Now our glue. This is our leathercraft cement. This is a great glue, strangely strong. But let's go ahead and glue our pattern sheeting down to our leather. Let's make sure we get glue right out to the tips. There we go. Okay, let's drop our pattern sheeting on top of that, and let's press this down. Okay, we've got a good press. Let's give that about 5 minutes. Let that glue set. We've given this time to dry, so new blade every time. Let's move some of this out of our way. Let's take a square, and let's do our best to trim this right on the line. Now, the pattern sheeting, easy to cut. But again, a new blade, let's make maybe 2 passes. Maybe 1 more. There we go, good clean cut. Let's do that all the way around. Now, one good point, I'm going to come from my inside out. It's really tough to try to come from the outside in and get a good corner, so let's just take our time. And separate a corner just if we need to. Okay, we've got that. So now I can see my center point on that. Let's go with a relatively small hole because we're just going to use this to line this up if we need to. But let's punch that. There we go. Okay, let's step back to our punch table and wet form onto this. We can use the same leathercraft cement to attach our design onto our form. Again, it's a great cement. But with our center mark, this bears mentioning. So right here on my design, I've come up a little further than 1/2 inch. I've come up 2 inches from the bottom line, and I've dropped in a center mark. So therefore, I know exactly where the center of that design is, and I can see it. Now, on a star, relatively easy to line up. But if you think about something like a heart, or maybe an oval, with an oval, I might actually punch 2 holes so I can make sure that's absolutely level. But work with whatever design you're going with. Okay, so let's take a piece of 4 to 5 ounce. This is our Weaver Select. It's just about the only veg tan I use. Let's get this good and wet. And I've actually overcut this about 1 inch on 3 sides. And you'll see what I'm talking about. But that gives me room to work. So let's get some good water in that leather. All right. So let some of that drain off. Now let's let that just sit. Let's give that about maybe 10 minutes. Let some of that water wick in. We've got a good water content in this. I can feel it. It's flimsy. It's got some weight to it. So let's take our form. Now I said I've added about an extra inch on 3 sides because right there, that line, that's going to be my throat. So I want to go even with that. And the one thing we have to do when we're wet forming is we've got to watch that line because it's easy to get this to work a little bit left or a little bit right. So let's start here, and we're going to just work easily on the pocket first. So let's work our fingers down and just work that around our form. Well, that was just one pass out and back, and actually we're starting to get a pretty good form. So let's work this just maybe down and back 2, maybe 3 more times. Okay, we've got a pretty good form going there. Now let's work on our star. We're going to come back, say every 10, 15 minutes over maybe an hour. Let's come back and work on this a little bit as it dries. We're going to get a nice form out of this. But on our star, let's do the same thing. Let's just start working that down. And again, in pretty much no time at all, we're starting to get a good form there. Now, we can always use a bone. And we've got a good bone. It's a good quality tool. But to me, it's just exceptionally hard to get first off a straight line. But this is so easy to make a very heavy mark, and we're not going to be able to get rid of it. So what I prefer to do, let's just work this with our water and our fingers. So let's keep it working this for maybe another 30 seconds or so. Well, just spending about 2 minutes, we've actually got a pretty decent form on this. So what I'm going to do over the next hour or so, yeah, let's make sure we keep an eye on that line. So over the next hour or so, about every 15 minutes, I'm going to come back over and I'm just going to work it for a minute or 2 as it dries. We'll get a good form with this. Okay, so while this dries, let's jump over to our punch table. Let's come at this a different way. Cutting a simple geometric design, no issue. We've actually seen that. But let's get a little more complicated now. And again, sky literally is the limit here. Now, we're not necessarily working on our cell phone case. This is just a design, just an example. So for an example, let's go with an initial. Let's use a D for my last name. Now, one of the hardest things I do is say on the inside of that D, trying to cut out the inside of a design, very difficult. And the round corners, almost impossible. So what we're going to do, let's create our design with a simple strap of leather. So 8 to 9 ounce again, and this is about 3/8 of an inch wide, about 8 millimeters give or take. Make it your own, absolutely. Okay, let's start here. So across, I'm 2.5 inches, and tall, 2 inches. So 2.5, 2.5, that's 5, 2, that's 7. Well, let's cut this strap at about 8 inches long, give ourselves a little extra room. Okay, let's wet form this. Get some good water in that. Okay, and being an 8 to 9, again, let's let that sit for just about 5 minutes. There we go, we've got some good water content in that. And notice, now I can start to form that around into a design. Cool, that's what we're looking for. But all told, I'm not going to be able to make that curve. Well, I could if I press really hard. But notice too, my leathers start to bow up. Well, we don't want that. So how about this? Let's just roughly figure out where our curve's going to be. And about 2/3 of the way through the leather, I'm just going to cut some little V's. There we go. Let's do 3 of these right next to each other. Okay, we've got those. Well, now look at that. How easy is that, right? We've got a perfect bend, okay? So back here on our back end, let's cut this at an angle, and you'll see why here in just a second. There we go, okay? So now down here, our first cut to make our curve needs to be about right there. And again, we're just eyeballing this. We can add several or very few, and it's going to do exactly the same thing. But let's go ahead, again, go about 2/3 of the way through the leather, and let's cut 3 small V's. There we go, okay. And also too, think about a welt. We can make a very tight bend on a welt if we need to, but also notice, the leather seals up there. We can sew right through that, never know the difference, okay? So back down to here, very nice. That looks good, okay? So down here on this end, let's leave this a little longer and let's clip this. There we go, okay? Our D is coming together. Now, we're not going to glue this down just yet. We're going to let it dry for a minute. But right there, how about we curve that up? Oh, that's nice. And then down here, maybe we curve that down and out. Oh, very nice. That's starting to look good. Okay, so let's do this. We're going to let that dry. We don't have to actually let that dry in the shape because we've bent it to the form. It knows where it wants to go when it dries. So let's give that just maybe 10 minutes. Let a little bit of that water evaporate out. Okay, we've given this a few minutes. Now, this doesn't have to be absolutely dry. The glue's going to work whether it's fully dry or not. We just don't want this dripping wet with water, okay? So let's flip this over and let's add some glue. And just a little bit more down to the tip. There we go, okay? Let's drop this in on our lines. I'm going to start right here. Get that good and straight on that line. Let's press that down. And then let's bend our corner down and press that down. Good. And leave that little bend sticking up. Let's do the same thing on the bottom side. And let's press that down. Good. Yeah, that glue's sticking well, even with wet leather. Let's take our square. Maybe press that in just a little bit. Try to get that good and straight. That's really going to look nice. Okay? So now we need a little bit of a crossbar here. About right there. Okay? Let's glue this piece in. Lay that in. Press that. Well, actually, this is coming along nicely. Okay? How about we add a little point, both to the front and the back? Let's just cut a little diamond. And I'm almost out of glue, but we're almost out of work here, so we're going to be close. Let's get a little glue on that. Press that in right on our center line. Okay, do the same thing back here. And there we go. Well, actually relatively simple, but that looks good, doesn't it? And so easy to do. I'm ready to wet form something with that. Okay, so let's jump back over to our pattern table. We're going to press out that form just one more time, see how it looks. That is a good mold right there. And again, if we just work it a little bit more, I'm pretty happy with that. We could always come back in with, say, a bone and really work that tight. It's just hard to do. But try it. Give it a shot. You may be a natural on that one. Now on this one, let's step back because all told, before we wet form on anything like this, we need to let it fully dry. But also, it's going to be tough to get the pattern sheeting onto this. So all told, not a forever form, But we're probably going to be able to do 2, 3, or 4 projects with this before it starts to soften. But really, we don't have much time or money invested in this. So we can take this off, go a whole new direction. Now, we don't have to just form onto a pocket. We can do a pocket and a flap. That's actually a project that's going to tie the whole thing together. But leather too, so many possibilities. This is just common baling wire. From any hardware store, we can work that into all kinds of designs. Actually, that's a garden hose washer. That would work for us. Nuts and bolts, we could certainly do some kind of a cool, say, geometric pattern. We've talked about the diamond plate, right? Well, how about a concho? Drop a concho in on that. Okay, that looks pretty good. How about a little bit larger concho? I'm liking that. It's filling out the space on the inside of the star. Angelus paints. Say we're going to do a flag, a Texas flag, the great state of Texas. How about we do blue, white, and red? Again, so many ways we can go. How about one more out of the box? We flip our top grain. How about we drop that in on our star, press from the back. And all told, we're actually getting a pretty good reverse form out of that. So many possibilities, unlimited ways to go. Take this ball and run with it. And that's exactly right. There are so many possibilities with materials, designs, hardware, unlimited options. I hope you have a lot of fun with this, but I also hope you make something that is absolutely yours. Good luck with your projects.